May I have your attention, please, everyone? Thank you. Very good afternoon. Selamat sore. Siang menjelang sore. How is everyone? Good. You had lunch? Yes, you had lunch. Did you enjoy the beach yet? Not yet. Well, okay. One thing for sure, this afternoon, I know it's a Friday afternoon. I know that. It's a critical time after lunchtime. Usually our eyelids are very, very heavy. But anyway, you may have yourself some coffee maybe later on. But today we will continue our symposium on the third day, which is the last day. And later on, we will continue it with the closing ceremony, as well as the wrap-up of the 3-day symposium. Before I start, I would like to introduce myself. I am Alia, and I am very grateful to be able to be here as the host for today's symposium. Okay, so great to see everyone, and I would like to welcome you once again to our International Symposium on Enhancing the Effectiveness of Marine Protected Area, or MPA, Management in Indonesia. Okay, so this is the last day, and we've been seeing a lot of very interesting discussions since the first day. We had experts, policymakers, stakeholders from across the globe to engage in the critical discussions, and that is to actually discuss on how to manage best our future of marine conservation in Indonesia, which is what this symposium is supposed to bring. And Indonesia, just a little bit of a background, I believe all of you already know about this. Indonesia has established a national target of designating 30% of its coastal and marine waters for conservation by the year 2045. And this initiative is known as Indonesia Marine Conservation Vision 20 by 45. Acknowledges the nation's specific political, financial, and technical context while demonstrating its commitment to international biodiversity conservation goals. And this international symposium aims to convey key stakeholders, government agencies, MPA manager practitioners, scientists, NGOs, researchers, and private sector representatives. Oops, sorry, just 1 minute. And also demonstrating its commitment to international biodiversity conservation goals. All right, before we start, allow me to say hello and welcome to our guest of honors this afternoon, the Director of Conservation and Marine Biodiversity Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Bapak Firdaus Agung Kunto Kurniawan. Is he here, I believe? Yeah? Still with the minister, because he's a busy man in the past 3 days. But hopefully later on he will be joining us as well. I would like to also say welcome to the Deputy Director Conservation and Marine Biodiversity, Bapak Amer Hakim. Selamat sore. Selamat sore. Ya, abis ini kita lihat laut ya, Pak. Bisa. Oke, sambil menghitung apa yang ada di laut ya. Oke. Yeah. So, sorry, I was just mentioning, after this, maybe we can have a look around at the beach and also counting what's under the sea and all that. And somebody said salting. I don't know if you know what salting means. Salting means like, don't know how to behave because somebody teased you or something like that. Well, somebody teased him. I don't know who. I think it's this, yeah. Anyhow, I would like to say also hello to the AOR USAID Kolektif. Ada Ibu Seli Katarina, selamat sore and welcome to you again, Ibu. Chief of Party USAID Kolektif, Bapak Wawan Ridwan, selamat sore. The honorable speakers, conservation partners, donors, academics and experts from universities and college. All right, so also we've been having speakers, and in total we have 13 speakers across the globe, such as from Ecuador, Kenya, Nigeria, USA, Spain, Australia, and also from Indonesia to share their best practices in MPA management. Well, I think it's enough to say from me. We're going to start our panel discussion now with the the first discussion today, theme 3, technical advancements for enhanced MPA management, and the moderator will be, let me introduce to you, Bapak Abdul Halim, Direktur Program Kelautan Environmental Defense Fund Indonesia, DFI. Pak Halim, please come up to the front. Sorry, what is it again? EDFI for Indonesia. Anyhow, also we have our speakers it's raining here, using community collaboratives to enhance data collection. Case study in California using community-based tools to enhance monitoring and compliance, with a speaker, Mr. Bob Farrell, Senior Enforcement Consultant from WILD AID. Welcome to you, Pak Bob. WILD Aid. Thank you. And for the second speaker, talking about the dynamic system models to inform the design and management of MPAs, let us introduce Bapak Suryo Kusumo from IPB Bogor Institute of Agriculture. Selamat datang, Pak. Silakan. Yes. And our last speaker of the day, I cannot miss this one out because we need to have a female here in front. Don't stand here, okay, because it's raining here. Tracking near-shore vessel activity in marine protected areas using Marine Monitor, or M2, shore-based radar system, strategies for enforcement and monitoring human use. That's going to be the topic that she's going to bring. And she is Miss Anastasia Kunz, California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, NOAA affiliate. Please welcome her to our stage here. All right. Thank you. So we have all of our speakers and the moderator, and it seems like we're ready to have this panel discussion. So for this, I would hand over the stage to Pak Halim. Silakan, Pak.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, selamat sore, selamat datang di Bali to everyone. I hope that you've been enjoying your time in Bali, as I know that this is the day three of the symposium. And as mentioned earlier, that please also take time and make sure that you have spare time to look around, enjoy Bali, in addition, of course, to attending this very important symposium. So while you are in Bali, many people are they're willing to come to Bali, but not necessarily they get the privilege of doing that, if you will. So take that advantage while everyone is around here. See the beaches and go up to the mountain, Ubud, for example, or you can also see the other side of Bali, not only Sanur, but you can go to the other side in the western part of Bali, for example. There's a great national park there that have been established for a long time, and perhaps things can also be learned from the experiences of the park there in how they manage, for example, tourism, like a marine protected area that actually benefits local people from tourism activities. Yeah, just a short introduction, if you will. But of course, we're not going to be talking about that today. But we're going to be talking about a very important topic, if you will, in relations to marine protected area, i.e., on technological advancement for MPA management. And today we will have 4 presenters with us. One of them will be presenting virtually, and the other 3 presenters, of course, are with me today, as you can see them right away. So the one that's going to present virtually is Dr. Jos Knowles. I'm not sure if this is the Jos that I know of. Hey, Jos, yeah, of course. And then Bob Farrell, as well as Pa Suryo and Ibu Anastasia. I will briefly introduce, their bio a little bit when you are about to present your presentation, right? But for now, let me just give a little bit of context, if you will, from my own understanding about, the importance of, the MPA management in terms of enforcement, making sure the compliance of regulation and so forth, right? Because I think this is the topic that is going to be quite relevant, or that's going to be discussed in this session. I remember we have my old colleagues here, Pa Wawan, Ibu Rili, and others, Mas Amer, yeah. I remember in the late 90s, early 2000, MPA development in Indonesia was in the boosting. There's quite a lot of movement, if you will. And at the time, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries was established. That is actually also facilitated, the establishment of more marine protected areas around Indonesia, and it was, I think, how many million hectares do we have right now? 29 million hectares marine protected area has been declared currently in Indonesia. Yeah, so I think this is one way of the commitment, how Indonesian government, materialize its commitments to the global, Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework to achieve, the 30% designation of the ocean and marine waters as a conservation area. And we're very proud of it. We're definitely very Indonesian. We're very proud of that. But I think one thing that I remind in as a challenge is really on how could we make sure that all those 20-something 9 million marine protected that have been established is actually well managed, and with that achieve the target. The reason why it is established, it has a reason, right? And for that we have to do more, I think, to make sure that we are actually achieving what we stated as an objective of the MPA establishment. And one aspect that I have learned from my whole career with marine protected area here, especially in Indonesia, in the Coral Triangle region, is that enforcement, if you will, is just a very extremely important component that like if you're able to tackle that issues, I think you may have already tackled like more than 50-60% or probably 70% of the challenges in managing marine protected area to achieve their management effectiveness. And this is not easy, believe me. We NGOs like us, we've piloted quite a number of innovation, of course, together with the Indonesian government to see, to tailor a specific approach, for example, for a specific marine protected area. I remember the time when I was stationed in Komodo National Park. We have Ibu Rili there, my boss at that time. We've even worked with the National Park Authority to provide them with the platform for rangers, for the National Park Rangers to be able to stay longer at sea, so that they can go around, patrol the area. So that's a boat that we call floating ranger station. And also we've sort of helped providing, the speedboat where they can actually quickly respond, to quickly respond to any accident, for example, that reported happening inside of the park. This is just an example of effort that how we have been doing in the past in order, for example, to improve, the surveillance enforcement activities inside of marine protected area. And not only that, most importantly, I think is the human resources component is also very, very critical, in this regard. The ranger, the ranger staff, the park ranger, they need to be trained enough, to be able to, perform their duties correctly, because this is a very high risk undertaking, right? And you're very subject to any litigation, right? If you wrongdoing, you have the National Committee on Human Rights that may able to bring you into the legal case. So this is a very important aspect as well. In addition to that, we have learned also over time that actually the participation of the local community, the local people who are living nearby the area, the marine protected area, will also be a key, I think, yeah? Having them actively, become the ear and eyes of the enforcement agencies, because they live there in a day-to-day basis. And they can be the ear and eyes of the enforcement agencies, for example, and they can report to enforcement agents, to the formal enforcement agencies, the police or the park ranger, whenever they see any wrongdoing happening in the park. Yeah. So this is some of the example that I've sort of seen in the past, and I'm sure today we will hear more of the innovation, the new, the latest development on the subject, and we're glad. I'm glad that we have that 4 presenter, really highly experienced a presenter that will tell us about their experience along the line of this theme. So probably enough for my introduction. Let me just probably invite the first presenter. We give the the privilege to Jos, who's going to be presenting virtually. Where are you now, Jos? Are you somewhere in the West Coast, on the East Coast? Must be very late
Yeah,
for
I'm
you.
in Seattle.
Oh, in Seattle.
Yeah,
I don't know what time there
it's
in
11.
Seattle.
It's not as late as the East Coast. It's only 11 p.m. here.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jos. So we will give you the privilege to go first to present your presentation on the MPA and sustainable fisheries. So Jos has a PhD degree from on ecology from Cornell University. I have 15 minutes allocated for you, Jos. Hope you can stick to the time, and we like to have more time for Q&A after all presenters have presented their presentation. Times is yours, Jos.
Wonderful, thank you. For minimal, I'm going to share my whole screen, which seems to have less technical issues. Means I won't be able to see chat, so please somebody speak up. I'm very happy to hear if there are issues, or I don't know if we're handling questions later. But yeah, I will be sharing my entire screen for the sake of minimizing technical issues. And it's a pleasure to be here, to see some familiar faces and hear several familiar names, albeit in a bit of a different context. And some of you may not actually realize the long history I have with MPAs. And so I'll talk briefly about that, but primarily to give a sense of the important linkages between MPAs and other forms of fisheries management. So let me just go ahead and give you take-home messages. MPAs and other forms of fisheries management overlap, and they can complement or conflict with each other. And those are important things to consider, because as Pak Halim was alluding to, having community support for fishery management regulations as well as MPA regulations is a vital step to having compliance. You know, we can use whatever enforcement resources we have efficiently, but in the end, having that community compliance turns out to be a very important aspect of being able to have successful policies for our oceans. Now, the effect of MPAs on fisheries depends very much on a key question, which is whether MPAs are no-take or not. So they both serve important functions, and I'm going to give you a taste of what those functions are and how they're distinct from each other. But they are quite distinct functions from a fisheries management perspective, whether we have areas where there's no take versus areas that just have important restrictions. And ultimately, it's my belief that we should be striving for integrated system design that maximizes the complementarity between MPAs and other forms of fisheries management, and that would involve managing fishing everywhere. So we're no longer in a state where we say, well, hey, we're going to pick a few areas to manage fisheries and let everything else happen however it's going to happen outside of that. But then within the context of managing fishing everywhere, to strategically use no-take MPAs and other MPAs to achieve various fisheries and conservation goals. Now, those of you who have interacted with me in a fisheries realm will recognize this is a common theme of mine, that we need to think about what we're trying to achieve so that we can design systems that are going to move us in the right direction. Just to give you a little taste of my background with MPAs, I started life with a PhD in marine ecology with an emphasis in applied math. Later got a master's in economics, emphasizing the psychology of decision making, which really it adds a lot of flavor to the work that I do. But early on in my career, during my PhD and shortly after, I was one of the pioneers in researching the design and function of marine protected areas. That work quickly led me to focus specifically on the fisheries interactions. And the reasons that I did that was that most of the places that I was working with MPAs, fishing was the primary activity that was of concern. That didn't mean that there weren't other potential threats, but most of the effort that was being put into implementing marine protected areas were around implementing fisheries regulations within those areas. So it made sense for me to understand fisheries better. So I basically started learning fisheries. And from that, getting into fisheries, I transitioned into a much broader perspective, not just looking at closed areas as a fishery management tool, but at the general concept of robustness. What can we put into a management system so that that system has the capacity to be able to perform well, even in the face of uncertainties and also accidents, because we can apply the best science we may want to managing these systems, but we're going to be wrong some of the time because there's a lot of uncertainty around the science. So robustness is a word you'll hear several times in this presentation, and it's the property of being able to maintain a healthy ecosystem and healthy human uses of that ecosystem in the face of uncertainty and mistakes. From there, I started doing scientific analysis on the trade-offs among multiple competing objectives, both for MPAs and for fisheries. And then from there, got into designing full environmental management systems that are designed to achieve preferred compromises across competing objectives. And I've applied this work all over the world, including having spent several years and am currently working in Indonesia. All right, so let me give you the overview of what we do when we do fisheries management, and then I'm going to tie these pieces specifically into the concept of marine protected areas. When we have a lot of resources, we can rely on catch controls. Those are things like setting a total allowable catch, having individual quotas. These are tools that we use for the more actively managed fisheries in the US, because we have a lot of data to be able to come up with estimates of appropriate catch levels. And we have a lot of connection into communities and enforcement mechanisms so that we can set catch limits and actually expect that people are going to catch about that amount of fish. And that is when we have that control, it tends to be an easier thing to do, because what we're trying to do when we manage fisheries is to control the catch. So we're doing it directly in those cases. In most fisheries, though, we don't have the resources to be able to do direct catch controls. And so we tend to focus on effort controls, which are things like limiting the number of people that are allowed to fish within the system, or the type of gear, the number of gear units, the number of people that are involved. And then there's some other more indirect effort controls that can include things like allowing people to fish 8 months of the year, but having 4 months of the year be a closed season, or having other sorts of size limits or gear limits. Those typically end up functioning as an effort control, in the sense that what we end up with when we have effort controls is a consistent relationship between the abundance and the expected catches. Because when people fish more, they catch more fish, but also when people fish the same amount, but there are more fish in the ocean, they catch more fish. The third type of control that we have in fisheries are setting up off-limits populations. And these are situations where we cut off fishing when we get below a certain population size. That can happen within the context of catch controls if we have all of those resources. But we can have an implicit policy that does that in a couple of other ways. One of which is no-take marine protected area. Those are creating, if they match the biology of the species appropriately, they're creating an area where people are not allowed to fish. And so even if people fish very hard outside of that area, there's that refuge of fish that are off limits to fishing. And I bring these up because I'll get into showing you how each of these types of controls has a different function when it comes to what we can achieve from fisheries management. And so again, I just want to highlight spatial management can come up in the form of off-limits populations, in other words, no-take marine reserves, but also can come into in a form of effort controls if we have areas that have regulations that are designed to limit the types and amount of fishing that happen within that area. Now, I'm going to bring up a concept that is, I've debated whether I was going to do this, but I think it really helps with insight. So I'm going to take a moment to do this. In fisheries, we've transitioned when we have resources to using things called harvest control rules. And these are rules or formulas where we take whatever kind of assessment we can have of the health of fish stocks, and we use that look and apply it into a formula that then tells us how restrictive management measures would be. So these are pre-agreed upon rules, and there's two big advantages of having pre-agreed upon rules. One is that when there is a sign of a problem that's coming through
Recording
whatever kind
stopped.
of
The recording has stopped.
indicator or
Recording in
assessment that we're
progress.
This meeting is being recorded.
that we act much more quickly if we've already pre-agreed upon the rules. The other thing that harvest control rules do, and that's why I'm bringing them up here, is that when we have already had the management body commit to how they are going to adjust policy in response to the population increasing or decreasing, that's something that we can actually simulate in very sophisticated ways to be able to understand the performance that we're getting from fisheries. And so there's this great opportunity with harvest control rules to be focusing on performance. And I'm going to tie that back to the idea of MPAs here. So let me just show you a harvest control rule. Typically it looks like this, where the blue line is actually representing the biological productivity of the fish population that we're interested in. And so it is essentially the additions to the population as a function of how abundant it is. So the horizontal axis is more fish to the right and less fish to the left. The vertical axis is the number of fish that are either being produced or removed. It functions for both. So in the case of the blue line, it shows the strength of growth that we would expect in that population, and it's essentially additions. The red line is a way of defining a harvest control rule, and it's the removals that are there. So when we can look at additions and removals on a graph like this, we can do very rapid and effective analysis about what kind of strengths and weaknesses any particular harvest control rule will have based on the geometry of those two lines. So and harvest control rules can be any sort of shape of line that you can imagine. I'm showing you one particular shape because I just want to highlight these three different types of controls. Off-limits population controls are the segment that's on the bottom. It's the one that is down at 0, meaning there's going to be no catch until we get to a certain critical abundance level. So it's an off-limits population because below that critical population level, there's no fishing happening. A no-take marine protected area network that is sufficiently large to the movement patterns of the adults within the population can actually function just like that red line there, the bottom red line. Effort controls tend to work out to be pretty well represented by diagonal lines like this middle segment. And then catch controls, in general, you can use catch controls for any of these things. We can just say, hey, we want to catch at a certain amount. But catch caps that would say, hey, we're going to allow a certain amount of catch, but no more, would be represented with something like the top line. So you can draw lines that are actually representing underlying policies and have a harvest control rule that is really more implicit based on the kinds of policies that we have. And when it comes to MPAs, the off-limits populations are this bottom line, and other forms of MPAs are most likely going to end up being this diagonal slope line. All right, so what does that mean in terms of what we can potentially get from different MPA types? From a fisheries perspective, smaller no-take areas may be sufficient when it comes to goals that have to do with legacy or preservation. That if they're designed well and MPAs are an appropriate measure for the species we're looking at, a relatively smaller network of marine protected areas might be enough to give us some confidence that we'll still have that species around. It may not be thriving, but it'll be around. If we get into more of a medium-sized MPA network, specifically of no-take, something more in the 10 to 20% range, now that's starting to add robustness to otherwise managed fisheries. So in other words, if the fishery is also managed outside of the MPAs, we can have MPAs in that what I'm calling the medium-sized range and be able to achieve this concept of robustness MPAs can be super valuable in giving us confidence that our system is going to do okay in the future, even when there's a lot of uncertainty. And that's a huge, huge role of MPAs, specifically no-take MPAs in fisheries management. Now, I also wanted to address large, and I'm setting up a large, which is quite huge here, 30 to 40% of an area that's no-take. There's a specific example of that, actually, though, one of the speakers works in that area. The Channel Islands, when scientists were debating how big the network of MPAs should be there, they used a concept that they called the scorched earth policy. So this was the idea of, what if there's really poor management outside of marine protected area network? What will we need from the no-take marine protected area network to give us that concept of robustness? And they actually proposed 40% as that level. So you can see how different sizes of MPA networks can really, they all can potentially provide different sort of benefits and serve different functions, but they're quite different depending upon the scale of MPAs that we're dealing with. And a key point I want to make here, because this is a really a place where we can really come together from a fisheries and MPA perspective for communities. Please note that robustness is fundamentally necessary for us, our management of the oceans. It's really, I think, the underlying concept that most of us have when we use the word sustainability. So we need robustness because no-take MPAs are good at giving us robustness. The more that we use those, the less we have to look for other ways of achieving robustness within fishery management systems. So this is potentially a huge contribution for fisheries, and also potentially a really important justification for no-take MPAs. Having focused on no-takes, restricted fishing areas, ones that are not no-take, may also add robustness, but what they're more likely to do is reduce effort. And what that really primarily does from a fisheries management perspective is it affects the balance between the amount of fish that are being caught versus the amount that are left in the sea. There's a fundamental trade-off between those two things. The more fish we catch, the fewer they're going to be in the ocean. And so having these restrictions will tend to favor having more fish in the ocean and less overall fish catch. So I mentioned
sorry to interrupt. Just sorry to, you have 5 more minutes left. 5 more minutes left.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm actually kind of wrapping up right now, so that's excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So if we take this concept that MPAs can have an important function for fisheries, that may not be the only objective that we have for MPAs, and there may be MPAs that are designed for other purposes. Nevertheless, there is that fundamental connection there. And the connection goes both ways. When fisheries are managed outside of MPAs, then we can achieve a lot more of fishery objectives by having relatively smaller MPAs, whereas if there's really little or no fisheries management outside of MPAs, we have to look at the MPAs for doing much heavier lifting. So integrated management would be a seascape with managed fisheries throughout, in which the aim of some MPAs is fisheries management, and others may have additional conservation benefits. And in this scheme, fisheries are specifically credited for those benefits that all MPAs are providing, so that the complementary fisheries management regulations would be able to be less severe to achieve the same sorts of things we might want to achieve. And this is a way to be able to take the concept of what are we trying to achieve with MPAs and what are we trying to achieve with fisheries and integrate them together. So the last point, the last slide I want to share is just to give you a little bit of flavor of the sort of analytic tools that exist to be able to think about the fisheries impacts of MPAs and vice versa. So a number of these tools fall into a category that could be described as a bioeconomic simulation model. And I provide a link to one example that's a very well thought out one called Marlin. These models give complex results, and that can be very appealing if we're trying to understand nuances and complexities in what the design of an MPA might be, or what the design of MPA plus fisheries management might be. However, it's worth noting that when we are building models that have complex results, they typically demand that we have complex inputs in there. And this is often a challenge because we, for most of the world, including a lot of US fisheries, we are in a data limited circumstance where we don't really have the information that we would like to be able to populate a model like a bioeconomic simulation model. So as an alternative to that, there's another tool that I'm sharing with you, which is primarily, and I will say it's not the most user-friendly for MPAs, but this is my tool, I've designed it, and I am more than happy to work with anybody who's interested on how you would use it to be able to simulate marine protected areas. This tool is specifically, its purpose is to guide people in designing harvest control rules. And because there's this link between harvest control rules and MPAs in the form of that off-limits population and the effort controls, there is the opportunity to be able to do some more general simulation of fisheries and MPAs using this tool, but it's going to be much more general than something that's really that requires a lot of input like Marlin. And I will stop at that. I look forward to hearing from the rest of the panels and the discussion that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh, for an excellent presentations, and big hands of applause for Josh. Yeah, I am probably one of the proponent of a marine protected area that not only going to be functioning for biodiversity protections, but more importantly, contribute to the livelihood, the prosperity of the people. And fish is the connector, I would say, right? You know, the outcome of the biodiversity protection in which you have a healthy stock, fishery, for example, and then this is going to be the commodity, if you will, that people can harvest, can use to make a living and money, for example. And thank you for bringing up that thinking, and I'm sure that a lot of questions will come up, but we will hold all questions right after the sessions. And I think the organizer will also gonna share a link to Mentimeter, right, Pawan, where people can jot down their questions, and later we can select the question that we're gonna be asked to the presenter at the end of the presentation. So we move on to the second presenter, Bob Farrell. So he's going to present presentation on using community collaborative to enhance data collection, case study in California, using community-based tools to enhance monitoring and compliance. Just before you start, Bob, I couldn't emphasize more the importance of having data and information, you know, to inform the decision making to improve the effective management. However, it is easy to say, but very, very challenging to implement, especially in the case of Indonesia, and I'm sure in many places around the world too, right? You know, their challenge is just so huge, yeah. And I'm really looking forward on how the innovation that you're gonna be presented today to address these very important issues that we can learn from. And Bob has his MSc degree on Emergency Service Administration from California State University of Long Beach. Time is yours, Bob.
Now you can hear me, right? All right. Good deal. All right. Thanks you again for inviting me here. And I'm going to move this along really quickly because I know we got to make up some time here. So just really briefly, for those of you that missed me yesterday, my background is enforcement. So I was the chief of the Marine Enforcement for California, retired, went over to Hawaii, where I'm from, and became the chief of enforcement for their Department of Land and Natural Resources. Since 2019, I've been working all over the world consulting in enforcement programs for WildAid. WildAid works primarily in the compliance area, stressing good enforcement systems. We've heard a lot about that, so that's a really important thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about community collaboratives, what they are and what they aren't. And what they aren't is enforcement, right? So that needs to be clear to everyone. They are compliance related. They are part of the compliance package, but they don't do enforcement. Enforcement is generally the purview of government, right? And so another thing we need to talk about is the proper training, as was mentioned earlier, about the rangers, proper equipping, all that kind of stuff. But today we're going to talk about how the community can make my job easier and provide some levels of compliance, right? We all understand education and outreach. People need to know the rules so that they can comply with them. There's a deterrence factor. If people, poachers see somebody on the horizon that they don't know, they may stop that poaching activity and move on. So one of the things that we did in California was to create a community collaborative system that would basically have the community that's co-located near the MPA, the Marine Protected Area, take ownership in that process. So we'll talk a little bit about overview, the mission, the structure, citizen monitoring, which I'm sure you all are interested in, the data collection. We'll talk about some tools that are used currently, and then some newer tools, and also the reporting requirements. Uh-oh, there we go. So I'm sure that all of you were involved in the process for establishing the MPAs in Indonesia. And as was mentioned many, many times, it's important to integrate stakeholder involvement in that process. So when you guys first formed those MPAs and you built those MPAs, you brought everybody in and you had good stakeholder engagement. But then the MPAs were created. Now what, right? How do those stakeholders stay engaged in that process? So the mission of our MPA Collaborative Network is to empower local communities to engage in marine protected area stewardship for a healthy ocean. So those same stakeholders that help form those MPAs have a continuing interest and obligation to make sure that those MPAs are adequate and managed correctly. If there's adaptive management, all those things are still important. They still need extensive stakeholder involvement. And this is a little bit of history. Again, I'm going to skip through this real quick. Basically, we started small, got some grant money from government agencies, and went to the communities that were co-located near these MPAs and put together meetings, stakeholder sessions, listening sessions to try and get input. Come on. There we go. A little delay. So anyway, I'm going to skip through that. So here's a quick graphic of, trust me, I'm not pushing a button. I'm glad it's not a pistol or I'd be shooting everybody, right? So these are all the MPAs. We have 1,100 miles of coastline. The coastal counties are very important to California's economy, both for recreational and commercial fishing. There's numerous MPAs, 124 MPAs along the coastline. And so each of these symbols represent a particular community collaborative. So again, when we go into the community, we sit down with the stakeholders and we attempt to build a structure. So whether that's an advisory board structure, a more formal structure with a president and officers, but we attempt to build that structure, give them some models to choose from, and make sure that we leave that community with a particular leadership group or a way to function that can move forward. If we have everybody in the room and everybody's talking at once, that's not going to work. So we try to give them some model structures to allow them to organize so that they can effectively do things. So again, we also provide training for volunteers, and at the end of the presentation, there's a couple websites. It's got an enormous amount of information that gives training guides to train the volunteers. So once there's an established MPA collaborative with a structure, we attempt to recruit volunteers, or they attempt to recruit volunteers. We train them in data collection. We bring enforcement officers, talk to them about what proper patrol procedures would look like, how to engage with the public, what they can and can't do, what they need to look for, and in particular, how to fill out a data sheet. So here's a sample data sheet. Again, we provide some models. A lot of times, you know, the community groups will like, we want to count people with wearing blue shorts. Well, that's not really a data set that we need for an MPA. So we give them a little bit of training. We give them some model data collection sheets to use. And again, this can be digitized in some cases, or they can just simply be a data sheet so that we have now a consistent data collection model, and we can provide that and integrate that into existing data models that more formal programs are using in the area. Oop. Okay. So here's one thing I wanted to talk about. So data collection is really important. When we were this morning at the session, we talked about the ocean accounting and all that. One of the data sets that I did not see accounted for was the patrol stuff, right? So where are not only your government agencies patrolling, how do we track that? How do we track the number of contacts, the number of infractions, and try to tease out a compliance rate from that? But also maybe community and citizen science, activity levels in a particular MPA, all those things would be great to have integrated into an accounting model. So data collection is really important. We have information, right? So how many people were using it, how many people were contacted versus violations. A lot of times the community group will not be able to conduct a thorough enough inspection to determine whether a violation is occurring or not. If it's a no-take zone or a no-go zone, those are easy things to determine. But if it's something in the nature of a size limit or a species prohibition, without proper authority and inspection, the community is not going to be able to find those. So that's something that, you know, won't be accounted for. Also deterrence, we mentioned it earlier. But, you know, if there's people doing illegal activity, they generally don't want to be seen by other people. So in some instances, the community members can, you know, be out there and serve as a deterrence. Even more so if they're, you know, in a community jacket that's highly visible, walking the MPA shoreline. So all those things help us with our compliance model. And then standardized data collection. Again, we provide the training, but there are some really good systems out there that can be not only used by enforcement, but they can be used by communities as well in citizen monitoring. So one of those that I like to talk about, or the two that I want to talk about, are SMART and Earth Ranger. They're both being used in, some of you may be familiar with it in some of your jurisdictions, but they're both free. And they're data collection tools. And you can see some of the data collection that we can get. So the device that the person has can be tracked for a patrol line, and you can see the exact line that that officer or that community member took on their daily patrol. You can see events along that line and then go ahead and tease out what those events were. Was it a contact? Was it a violation? Was it a sighting? Was it fishing? Was it shore-based fishing? Whatever data collection model you choose to have, you can collect that electronically and then summarize that. You can play with that data. You can pull that data out and create reports and get a much better handle on what types of activities are happening in your particular MPA. Another important component of, there we go. So we talk a lot about citizens reporting violations to enforcement agencies. We heard today that that's something that we want to do. So in California, we put together what was called CalTip. In Hawaii, we put together DLNR tip. In the Bahamas, we just put together a wild tip there as well. And so this is an anonymous program where citizens can download this app to their phone and they can get a hold of the relevant government agencies. So it's really important. These guys started in the US, but they're all over the world now. And it's a really important component. A lot of times we have a hotline and maybe somebody answers the phone or it goes to an answering machine. It's really important to not only receive those tips, but have a permanent record of where those tips go. This is really important. We go to a lot of community meetings and, there'll be community members that say, well, we called in these violations and we called in that these guys were doing stuff illegally. and there's no record of that, right? There's no record. So a system like this, it doesn't have to be this one, but you need a system to catalog those citizen tips and hold your enforcement staff, your government agencies accountable for what their response was. You know, there needs to be some sort of give and take. Community members get very frustrated when they call and report illegal activity and nothing happens. They don't see any response. They never get a call back, whatever that might be. So this is a way for managers and everybody else involved to have some sort of accountability with that. And again, I want to stress, we've heard it throughout the seminar, but it's a collaborative sort of discussion. When we bring all the constituents, all the stakeholders into these community collaborative meetings, it's a much freer flow of information than if we pull together a big town hall meeting and everybody comes and there's a couple loud voices in the room, but everybody else gets drowned out. So these community collaboratives are a way to kind of give a more diverse group a voice and also focus those groups into the particular area of interest, the MPAs that they generally live around. Again, this is the last slide. So this website is really, really good. There's huge amounts of information on it about the training, the program, the structure of community collaboratives. That's my email, my WhatsApp. Feel free to reach out. I'm available and to answer any questions about this or any other enforcement-related subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Exactly 15 minutes. Really appreciated it. Yeah, so I heard quite a lot of some similarities, or probably rather a lot of similarities with the experience we had in Indonesia, especially on the like the hotline stuff. And in some places, Pa Amer from MMIF can speak more about that. So the government also allowed that. I mean, create a system in which people can report, onto the number, but really the challenge is we have to make sure or that it is responded. Otherwise, people are gonna just get very upset on things that are not followed up. So great. And data collection, I think this is also probably the things that we can learn about. How data that is collected by the people, the citizens can actually be incorporated or can actually be analyzed, utilized, and analyzed by the government so that it's meaningful to inform the MPA management effectiveness. Because oftentimes, because of lack of the system that is available currently, many data, information that have been probably conveyed by the city, the community, are not necessarily incorporatable, for lack of the better term, into the calculation that the government may use or in the system that is used to evaluate the protected area progress. So great lesson learned in my opinion. Thanks Bob. So we move on to the next presenter, Dr. Suryo Kusumo. So he's going to present management MPA using socio-ecological resilience modeling approach, a case study of Pulau Pasing Gusung MPA in Selayar Island, South Sulawesi, Indonesia. Pak Suryo had a PhD degree on system dynamics from IPB, my alma mater too, Pak. Pak Suryo, time is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Pak Abdul Halim, my senior. Allow me to present my presentation in mix in Bahasa and English. So because of the, ya. Nanti, ya, jadi kita gantian pakai alat bantu suaranya gitu. Jadi ini, this is a one semester lecture. I have to summarize it to one presentation and 15 minutes time. So it's very tough for me. Jadi riset ini adalah sebenarnya mencoba melihat kawasan konservasi dari sisi resiliensi, tapi menggunakan pendekatan SES, Social Ecological System. Jadi kita nggak hanya bicara ekologi, tapi juga sosial dan ekonominya seperti ini. Ini kasusnya adalah riset PhD saya di Pasi di Pulau Pasi Gusung di Selayar. Jadi mudah-mudahan nanti bisa menjadi perhatian juga ya masukan dari universitas. Next slide, please. Oh ya. Jadi ini harus saya sampaikan secara cepat, mudah-mudahan bisa dimengerti. Yang pertama terkait dengan pendahuluan, kemudian bagaimana kita menganalisis sistem perikanan di sana, kemudian kita mengembangkan indeksnya, indeks resiliensinya dengan pendekatan SES ya. Kemudian kita mencoba membangun modelnya dari pendekatan SES tersebut, kemudian kita membangun skenario-nya. Setelah itu coba kita nanti dari hasil simulasi skenario kita lihat apa rekomendasinya kalau kita mengelola kawasan konservasi. Nah, ini adalah kawasan Pulau Pasi Gusung yang ditetapkan, sekarang sudah ditetapkan resmi oleh pemerintah, luasannya sekian. Nah, ini yang menjadi masalah di sana adalah penurunan hasil tangkapan ikan karang. Bagaimana kita mendapatkan itu berdasarkan ini ya, jadi ini adalah SES-nya, jadi intertwine between social and ecological system. Intinya ada di sini. Nah, ini ya, hubungan antara sosial ekonomi ini pasti terjadi di nggak hanya di perairan di darat itu ya, tapi di laut juga terjadi. Kemudian next ini ada teorinya gitu ya, teori dari resiliensi. Sebenarnya resiliensi itu adalah bagaimana sistem itu bisa adaptif gitu ya, bisa adaptif, bisa self adaptif atau ada masukan lain untuk mengatasi masalah seperti itu. Nah, indikator-indikatornya nanti kita coba lihat ya, bagaimana kita dapat indikator itu kita bangun dari community base. Jadi kita membangun sistemnya itu bukan dari expert tapi dari community base, dari local community seperti itu. Nah, ini adalah fase-fase di dalam kita membangun modelnya. Jadi riset ini memang kita laksanakan kurang lebih sekitar 3 tahun ya. Jadi kebetulan ada pembiayaan dari Seacrest Project, Capturing Coral Reef Ecosystem Services, kerjasama antara IPB, University of Queensland, kemudian ada juga dari Filipina yang dibiayai oleh World Bank seperti itu. Ini adalah tahapannya, memahami sistemnya, kemudian kita membangun, kemudian kita melihat skenario dan juga kita akan menyusun rekomendasinya seperti apa. Bisa next. Oh ya. Oke. Ya. This is how to build the model based on local community or community based modeling actually. Yang pertama kita harus menentukan resourcesnya. What the resources and then what is activities. Kemudian kita melihat hubungan antara resources, hubungan antara activities, dan juga pressure. Setelah kita lihat hubungan semuanya, kemudian what is the decision? Decision itu kita peroleh dari local community. Anda maunya seperti apa itu loh. Ini yang kita lihat dari suatu kawasan konservasi. Mungkin masyarakat mau ya dibuat sebuah kawasan konservasi, tapi mereka pengennya seperti ini gitu. Nah, ini yang coba kita bangun, coba kita modelkan, dan semuanya ini kita bangun menggunakan ini metode. Pertama kita scoping ini kita scoping sumber daya apa saja di sana, aktivitasnya apa saja, sampai kita ketemu masalahnya. Jadi the problems, kita ranking masalahnya dari yang paling penting sampai yang tidak penting. Setelah kita melakukan scoping, kita melakukan FGD. Jadi kita ada focus group discussion setelah kita menemukan masalahnya. Kita menggunakan apps. Ini apps ini bisa Bapak Ibu unduh ya di Play Store atau di App Store. Ini dikembangkan oleh Project Seacrest. Jadi terkait dengan social ecological system untuk elicitation itu ya. Jadi untuk menggali ya sebenarnya informasi yang ada di local community seperti itu. Nah, yang paling kanan ini adalah konseptual model yang dibangun berdasarkan apa yang ada di benak local community seperti itu. Nah, ini yang Bapak-bapak pelaku di sana atau local community di sana menjadi paham sebenarnya knowledge mereka itu sebenarnya terkait dengan kawasan konservasi itu lengkap gitu loh. Nah, ini akan kita coba modelkan ke dalam sebuah sistem dan pendekatan sistem. Nah, ini model yang sudah kita terjemahkan menjadi konseptual model ya. Dari main problem di sana itu adalah terjadi penurunan hasil tangkapan di nelayan seperti itu. Jadi di sini udah jelas ya, ada resources yang warna biru, kemudian ada activitiesnya, kemudian ada pressure-nya, dan juga ada decision. Decision itu adalah yang poligon yang warna kotak. Jadi mereka butuh pekerjaan alternatif, mereka butuh surveillance, dan juga mereka butuh alternatif livelihood gitu ya. Ini yang mereka inginkan. Nah, kemudian dari konseptual model ini selanjutnya kita ambil datanya. Jadi data ekologi, sosial dan ekonomi kita ambil selama 3 tahun. Jadi saya ke lokasi itu setiap 3-4 bulan mengambil datanya untuk sebagai data training untuk kita membangun model seperti itu. Nah, ini yang pekerjaan cukup berat sebenarnya, tapi harus kita lakukan supaya kita dapat datanya. Kalau kita nggak dapat data real selama 3 tahun, kita nggak bisa membangun model dengan baik seperti itu. Ini adalah indeks yang kita kembangkan. Sebenarnya indeksnya ini sebenarnya sudah ada ya, sudah ada dikembangkan oleh teman-teman LIPI, yaitu indeks kesehatan terumbu karang. Kemudian kita introduce, kita masukkan sosial sistemnya dan juga economic sistemnya. Jadi kita akan membuat indeks baru gitu ya, indeks resiliensi terumbu karang seperti itu. Nah, ini adalah indeksnya seperti ini kira-kira gitu ya. Jadi kita pakai pendekatan cost benefit indicators, bukan cost benefit analysis itu ya. Kalau cost benefit analysis kan lebih ke ekonomi, kalau ini cost benefit indicators untuk membangun indeksnya seperti itu. Nah, ini kira-kira seperti ini indeksnya. Kemudian next. Ini adalah nilai dari 3 tahun pengamatan itu kita masukkan ke dalam indeks seperti itu. Ini sederhananya seperti gitu. Kemudian kita modelkan, kita jalan running kurang lebih sekitar 3 tahun ya, 3 tahun sesuai dengan pengambilan data. Nah, selanjutnya kita bandingkan indeks yang kita bangun, kita bandingkan dengan indeks kesehatan terumbu karang yang dimiliki oleh LIPI. Ternyata nggak beda jauh ya, kalau kita konversi kali 10 ya nilainya nggak beda jauh itu dengan yang indeksnya LIPI. Artinya sistem model yang dibangun menggunakan sistem ini nggak beda jauh gitu ya dengan real yang ada di lapangan seperti itu. Nah, kita kemudian kembali masuk ke dalam model sistem dynamics-nya. Di sini kita mulai membangun modelnya dari konseptual model menjadi matematik model seperti itu. Nah, ini yang menarik di dalam perikanan di sana ya. Jadi setelah kita, kebetulan kami sempat mengadakan FGD dengan teman-teman pelaku pembius gitu ya. Dari data ini kita lihat bahwa ketika musim buruk gitu ya, West Monsoon, musim buruk, justru pelaku pembiusan ini aktivitasnya paling tinggi. Tapi ketika musim yang lain, aktivitas perikanan tradisionalnya yang menaik seperti itu. Nah, ini yang terjadi di lapangan berdasarkan kita FGD dengan pelaku pembius seperti itu. Nah, kemudian kita coba validasi ya, kita validasi. Dari validasi ini kesimpulannya adalah dari ketiga model ini ya, model ekologi, kemudian ada model biomass, reef biomass, fishes, kemudian ada juga model fisherman revenue gitu. Jadi dari ketiga model ini ternyata tidak berbeda nyata ya, secara statistik seperti itu. Nah, ini yang menjadikan model ini harus dilanjutkan sampai tahap simulasi untuk mensimulasikan 10 tahun ke depan atau 120 bulan ke depan. Nah, ini adalah analisis sensitivitas ya dari model. Sebenarnya ini adalah kunci ketika kita membangun skenario. Jadi kita membangun skenario itu bukan worst skenario atau best skenario, tapi kita melihat nilainya dari analisis sensitivitas. Nah, penjelasannya kira-kira seperti ini ya. Jadi kalau kita melihat pengawasan KKP terhadap terumbu karang gitu ya, minimal 10% terumbu karangnya dikonserv, itu karangnya tuh masih oke gitu. Sederhananya seperti itu. Kemudian minimal 10% nelayan punya alternatif livelihood, terumbu karangnya oke. Kemudian minimal 10% zona inti, terdiri dari zona intinya itu adalah dilindungi gitu ya, itu terumbu karangnya oke. Kalau untuk biomasa itu minimal, kalau dari sisi pengawasan gitu ya, pengawasan itu minimal 10 hari dan 3 jam setiap harinya gitu. Itu biomasa ikan oke. Kemudian 5% dari nelayan punya alternatif livelihood, itu produksi ikan oke. Nah kemudian selanjutnya 10% dari terumbu karang itu dikonserv sebagai core zone, nah itu biomasa ikannya oke. Nah kalau kita melihat ke pendapatan nelayan, itu upayanya lebih besar gitu ya. Jadi minimal 20 hari, kemudian 6 jam setiap hari itu harus dilakukan pengawasan. Nah kemudian minimal 15% masyarakat punya alternatif livelihood, itu pendapatan nelayan cukup itu ya. Kemudian yang terakhir, minimal 45% terumbu karangnya itu dikonserv, pendapatan nelayan oke. Nah ini akan menjadi dasar kita membuat skenario. Nah kemudian dari model, kemudian dari model tadi kita coba spasialkan, jadi integrasi antara model dengan spasial GIS gitu ya. Nah kemudian untuk kita membangun model spasial kita ambil kurang lebih 112 titik data, yang 60%-nya kita gunakan untuk membangun model, 40%-nya kita untuk training model. Nah ini kurang algoritmanya ya, jadi kita membangun model spasialnya dari algoritma ini, nanti kita dapat tutupan karang hidup, tutupan karang mati, kemudian alga dan juga ikan, biomasa ikan. Jadi kita modelkan secara spasial. Nah ini adalah integrasi ya antara sistem dynamic model dengan spatial model, nanti kita akan ketemu indeksnya secara spasial. Ini adalah model konseptualnya ya, kita menggunakan sistem dynamics. Jadi di sini terlihat bahwa coral benthic controlnya itu adalah 1 ya, jadi 100% dia nggak berubah. Kemudian next ini adalah model untuk populasi. Jadi kita juga menghitung, jadi dari populasi itu berapa yang akan menjadi nelayan gitu loh. Karena kalau nelayan itu pendapatan tinggi, anaknya cenderung nggak mau jadi nelayan gitu loh. Nah ini akan coba kita modelkan sehingga kita lebih realistis gitu ya di dalam mensimulasikannya. Nah ini adalah tadi disampaikan oleh George, kita juga membangun bioeconomic model, jadi bukan hanya ecology model, tapi juga bioeconomic model, kemudian juga kita hitung juga kira-kira revenue-nya seperti apa. Nah ini terakhir adalah indeksnya, jadi indeksnya coba kita simulasikan, baik indeks yang dibangun oleh teman-teman LIPI maupun indeks yang kita bangun. Nah ini adalah skenario awal, jadi skenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dan 6 ya. Skenario 6 itu adalah skenario yang integrated skenario, jadi semua komponen dari analisis sistem tadi masuk ke dalam skenario 6, artinya ini the best skenario seperti itu. Kemudian kita simulasikan, kita analisis trade off ya. Jadi semua skenario harus kita trade off gitu. Jadi kita ranking, kita lihat mana skenario yang is the best skenario gitu ya. Nah, di sini jelas terlihat bahwa skenario 6 yang terbaik gitu ya. Cuma masalahnya adalah next slide ya. Masalahnya adalah kalau kita menjalankan skenario 6 itu pasti butuh budget gitu. Butuh budget, butuh effort yang besar gitu kan. Ini karena yang menjadi masalah di kita adalah di Indonesia itu terkait sustainable financing untuk MPA gitu ya. Hari kita membangun skenario 7. Skenario 7 adalah skenario bertahap. Jadi tahun pertama kita sediakan dulu alternatif livelihood-nya. Kemudian di tahun keempat kita inform, kita akan membangun kawasan konservasi. Kemudian di tahun ke-7 baru surveillance-nya jalan gitu loh. Nah dari 7 skenario ini diharapkan budgeting-nya tuh bisa gitu dengan kondisi yang ada. Nah setelah kita masukkan skenario 7 gitu ya, kemudian kita akan simulasikan seperti itu. Nah kita simulasikan kalau kita lihat dari coral reef cover-nya, performance di awal dia akan nggak bagus ya. Tapi setelah masuk tahun ke-4 dan selanjutnya, sampai tahun ke-10, performance-nya akan semakin bagus. Seperti itu. Nah, Ini poison fishing juga semakin berkurang, kemudian terakhir, nah ini resiliensinya cukup bagus ya. Jadi di awal performance yang nggak bagus resilience, tapi di end of simulation dia akan semakin bagus gitu. Nah ini mungkin bisa dibantu teman-teman operator ya. Ini video simulasi. Nah kalau kita simulasikan seperti itu ya. Kalau simulasi ini jalan, nah kira-kira ini adalah worst scenario, jadi no MPA management di dalam kawasan. Ini terlihat bahwa indeksnya akan cenderung turun gitu ya. Meskipun kalau kita bicara resilience, sistem akan berusaha untuk getting better, tapi akan butuh effort yang besar seperti itu. Nah ini kalau kita lihat dia kecenderungannya akan semakin turun seperti itu.
Okay.
Kemudian next slide. Nah ini skenario bertahap ya. Jadi skenario yang dilaksanakan secara bertahap gitu ya. Jadi mulai dari kita menyediakan alternatif livelihood, kemudian kita inform kawasan konservasi seperti ini, kemudian di akhir kita baru lakukan surveillance gitu loh. Nah ini terlihat di awal performance indeksnya nggak bagus, tapi in the end of simulation dia akan getting better seperti itu. Nah ini yang coba kita simulasikan.
Oke. Mungkin
Dikit lagi,
waktunya, ya oke, sedikit.
Nah ini setelah kita berikan pressure maksimum ke dalam sistem ini ya, ternyata kita dapat the blue polygon. Blue polygon adalah area yang punya resiliensi tinggi, tapi tidak masuk sebagai kawasan konservasi. Artinya kita punya peluang untuk memperluas zona intinya seperti itu. Nah ini yang coba kita dapatkan dari sini. Nah, kemudian next, rekomendasinya adalah seperti ini ya, jadi kita bisa membangun kawasan konservasi, kemudian kita memanagenya dengan pendekatan SES seperti itu ya. Kemudian rekomendasinya adalah membangun MPA, kita bisa menggunakan pendekatan sosial ekonomi ekologi gitu ya. Kemudian spatial modal kita bisa gunakan untuk membangun zonasinya seperti itu. Mungkin itu. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Terima kasih Pak Suryo. Jadi luar biasa. Jadi beliau mencoba menganalisa kompleks sistem di dalam sebuah kawasan konservasi gitu ya, untuk mendapatkan hasil yang optimal dari berbagai macam skenario yang sudah disampaikan tadi. Dan ini saya kira informasi yang menarik ini buat kita teman-teman yang bergerak di bidang pengelolaan kawasan konservasi, karena memang nimbang-nimbangnya ini ya harus tepat menimbang aspek ekologi, ekonomi untuk mendapatkan hasil yang optimal gitu ya. Terima kasih Pak Suryo. So we move on to our last presenter, which is Anastasia Kuntz from Noah Channel Island National Marine. I think it's sanctuary. Yeah, there's something's missing. Sorry. Yeah, on tracking near surface activities in marine protected area using marine monitor M2 shore-based radar system, strategies for enforcement and monitoring human use. Anastasia has a master's degree from Brand School of Environmental Science and Management of the University of California. So time is yours. 15 minutes, yeah? I can do it. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to the organizers. This has been such a wonderful symposium, and thank you to the speakers. They've been really interesting. I know this is the last one, so I hope everybody can hang with me for one more. I think it will be short presentation. So like our moderator said before, my name is Anastasia Kuntz. I work for the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation. We are an ocean science and conservation focused nonprofit, and we work really closely with the NOAA Sanctuaries program. And one of the programs that we work closely on is what I'm going to talk about today, which is our shore-based radar program, where we detect and track nearshore vessel activity in and around marine protected areas to support monitoring and enforcement work. So Marine Monitor, or M2, as we call it, is a small radar unit that sits above overlooking a marine protected area, and it monitors vessel activity within about a 5 nautical mile range of the radar unit. And M2 fills a really important data gap within California and USA, where I'm based, because the smaller vessels under 65 feet are not required to carry AIS, or Automatic Identification System, or VMS. So the small vessels are incredibly hard to manage and monitor, and they can pretty easily slip over the boundaries of the marine protected areas. All right, let's see if I can do this. Yeah. So currently in California, we have 8 sites that are operational. We have them in a variety of places. We have them in the red, the no-take marine protected areas or marine reserves. We have them along marine conservation areas, which allow some limited take. We have them at the really remote island sites, which you can see on the cutout of the map in the Channel Islands. And then we also have them along some of our really highly trafficked marine protected areas along the coast. So M2 is a really useful tool for enforcement because it allows for real-time monitoring as well as a historic playback. And it allows the users to set up alerts so they can know when small vessels are loitering within the marine protected areas. The 24/7 monitoring is really helpful because we also have information for what's happening at night, which is not normal for most visual surveys. And then to reiterate, we also have the ability to monitor those smaller vessels and even larger vessels if they turn off their AIS before entering a marine protected area. Okay, so I mentioned that we have the alerts set up and we have a real-time viewer for enforcement partners so they can access information for what's happening in the field at any given moment. And I think a really important part of that is if the patrol officers have service on their phone, they can check while they're on the way to a marine protected area and see if there's a vessel actively in the area. We also have a historic playback feature, which I think is really interesting. This allows us to create the monthly products, like what you're seeing here, some data products, which allows us to identify patterns of violations, outline areas of really concentrated activity. And you will notice there's some pictures up on the screen as well. Each site is equipped with a high definition camera as well. And this is really helpful to identify vessel activity and get defining or identifying characteristics of some of the vessels that we see. For most of our sites, we have really high levels of compliance. You can see that on this map here. There's not a lot of fishing happening within the marine protected area. And at this particular site called Coal Oil Point, you can even see that there's an artifact of healthy marine protected areas that has been mentioned before in this symposium. We have pretty strong evidence of the spillover effect, where we have the boats just lining the edges of the marine protected area and what we call fishing the line. So I just want to say some of the lessons learned for me personally as a data analyst that works with this data. I definitely think that these are most useful at no-take marine protected areas. It's easy, as been mentioned before, if you see someone loitering within a no-take marine reserve, it's pretty easy to assume that it's at least worth someone going out there to check it out because it's likely going to be fishing activity within the reserve. The other thing I want to say is it cannot replace personnel. This is not a substitute for enforcement officers. This is a tool for the enforcement officers to use. And I would say a really effective one at helping them planning patrols. It allows us to look backwards and say, okay, there's been hotspots of activity here. This is where we're going to go plan our patrol. And when there are violations, M2 provides multiple streams of evidence. So we have the radar location-specific information. We've got images of the vessels fishing within the marine protected area. And then in the cases where they do have their AIS turned on, we also have an AIS receiver that can collect that information as well. And as you can see in this example, it's already been used in a case package. This is from a case in Encinitas, California, where a commercial passenger fishing vessel, or some people might know them as charter boats, was fishing within the boundaries of the marine protected area. And this was useful in the case package. was doing so well. Okay. So in the Channel Islands, and I assume this is true for many other remote island areas, we have very little data on visitation. We don't really know the numbers of recreational vessels that are visiting our marine protected areas, or in our case, our sanctuaries. And this is a really interesting way to get a window into the smaller recreational vessels. You'll see on the screen, there's a picture of a sailboat. Because it's radar, it picks up everything. So even if it's not a fishing vessel, we will still be able to detect it, and it provides a really nice window into who is using the sanctuaries and the marine protected areas that you have. And while I have images up here on the slide, actually, I want to just emphasize the utility of a camera. This really helps us be able to match the behavior of a vessel with the type of vessel and even potentially the target catch. While it's not perfect, we're able to predict with the type of fishing with pretty darn high accuracy. For especially lobster, which is really common in Santa Barbara, trawl and purse seine fishing, we're able to predict that is the type of fishing that's happening from the track line, but the only way for us to confirm it without being there is with a camera. And so beyond tracking violations, M2 allows us to better understand patterns of fishing activity and how they change through space and time around our marine protected areas. I find it really interesting to see how the use of fishing the line and other different types of fishing changes through the seasons. And this is one real benefit of having an M2 system in our area. Ooh, okay. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation. I think I was very under time. Yeah, I'm happy to leave more time for questions.
And of applause. Thank you very much, Anastasia, for a great presentation. I think I can see some relevancy, if you will, with, that they might probably potentially be, piloted somewhere here in Indonesia, because, there's a lot of marine protected areas in Indonesia are located near shore that are, to some extent have some overlaps, if you will, with the fishing grounds of the small-scale fishers. And I think it's really good if we were able to detect exactly where the changes on the fishing ground, for example, and how they might, affect the zoning of the MPA, no-take zones, and so forth. So, and the use of camera seems to be, and GPS tracker. I've seen also some people presenting, where they set a small tracker behind the boat's vessel, small vessel, because in Indonesia, I think it's not compulsory for small fishing vessel to set up the, like the technology, the modern AAS system, if you will. But simple GPS tracker, this actually can still be doable and affordable for small-scale fisher. Yeah. Okay, great. I think we've concluded the 4 great presentations this afternoon, and it is time for questions for everyone. As I mentioned, we have the Mentimeter, we have the people team who's going to be monitoring the question from there. And of course, we'll also welcome the question from the audience directly to the presenter who is sitting here in the room, as well as to Josh, who is remotely joining with us. So, any questions? I see gentleman in front, and Pak Imran, probably 3 questions. Yes, and from gentleman in front. Sir, time is yours. Hopefully, please be succinct. We want to have the presenter to explain more. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've
Yes.
just maybe some clarification.
Sorry,
My name is Cairo. My question is to Josh. When we look at the MPA, and the percentage of MP globally, they are very little. Although we know how important MPAs are, particularly in developing countries. Now, this can be due to the idea that if I don't take that fish, somebody else will do. So my question will be, how can we enhance, knowing so well that you protect an area, you have more fish. And if I leave it, somebody else will pick. And now we are talking about 30 by 30. How can we try to enhance these so that people conserve more? Then to my colleague from Sulio, that was great. It was really scientific. But my question is, I saw scenario 6. Scenario 6 is very good for you, but what is acceptability level? Who will accept it? Because I was looking at the level of acceptability, the level of monitoring could be that expensive. And how do you integrate the climate change in your model?
Yes, I can go ahead and answer the question to me. Thank you very much for that question. And I'm going to try to keep it short, but there's a lot I could say about this. One point I want to make is that the elements of your question apply equally to when we're going in to do fisheries management. These are cases where we are encouraging people to be able to make sacrifices in the short run with the idea that that will be fish that they are going to be able to access in the long run. And so I think one important point to consider is we need to be honest about whether that is a realistic expectation. So if there are reasons, poachers or otherwise, where we actually feel like it's very possible that that person is right, that if they don't catch it, somebody else will, we have a problem in terms of getting community buy-in on that, because we're not going to get the functions of marine protected areas or fisheries management that we would get otherwise. To your question, though, of how to be able to bring people along, there's two different things that immediately come to mind. One of the first MPAs that I ever worked on was on the island St. Lucia in the Eastern Caribbean. And there was a tiny marine protected area, one of the smallest I've ever seen, where a local hotel had basically just decided that they were going to rope off a little section of reef and tell the fishing community that they were not allowed to fish there. There was no legal authority for this, but the hotel guests like snorkeling there. And there was enough rebuilding in that tiny postage stamp of a marine protected area that helped convince fishing communities that, this might actually work if we do it on a larger scale. So that's one thing to consider. I will say, though, that when I do engagements thinking broadly about fisheries management as a part of a broader ecosystem management, that I find one of the most critical points for bringing communities along in that journey with me is to acknowledge that there's a lot of uncertainty and things may not go the way that we're hoping, to commit to very explicit actions that I am willing to take in the future if things are going the wrong direction, so that we can right the wrong. And that part is really important, because there's very commonly an attitude among fishing communities, not only that somebody else will take the fish, but also that if we put in a restriction, they're going to live with that for the rest of their life. And then there'll be another restriction after that. There's often a sense that everything only deteriorates. So giving very concrete details of how we would potentially go and take away a regulation if it's not working can be an effective tool for being able to bring communities along.
Thank you very much, Josh, for your response. Big round of applause. Next question to Pak Suryo. Yeah, please be succinct, Pak Suryo. Yeah, we have a few more minutes left.
Thank you for the question. That's our homework, because the climate change is not yet added in the model, because while we fit the model and the data in the field, it's near fit. And then we assume that maybe climate change will not mempengaruhi impact to the local community. Maybe that's our homework too now, because the research is we do in 2016, but maybe a lot of changes in the field.
Or they may have not seen.
That's our homework, to add the climate change impact to the MPA. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you. So I'm sure there more time later. You can talk more outside of the session. Take advantage of the time. And next question to Pak Imran, probably just one question, yeah. Just leave it.
Just two questions, but just clarification and offer for the next communication.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pak Jos. Let me introduce. I'm Imran Amin from the USAID Kolektif. This is something actually, Jos, that we would like to learn more from the case of the US in terms of how the fisheries management can include the MPA regime management into their management, because we have very different situation here in Indonesia. This is something I think I need to learn more from you. And for Bob, do you have any specific incentive to the community that you provide to be able for them to join your whatever you call it, a monitoring system, or is there any requirement or at least minimum capacity we need to have them be participated into the system? And Anas, in the last 5 years, we have installed this M2 also in one of our conservation area. It's very, very useful, but the problem here in Indonesia is not really integrated into our surveillance system, because we have to have so many permits, and even though I just want to inform that just last week we stopped our operations because we cannot. Maybe this is something. This is also become the main idea of the minister right now, to have this kind of technology. But we've tried this in the last 5 years, but it's not still
functioning.
It's functional, but it's not really useful because of the data system.
Yeah, I think we've captured the question. Sorry, Pak.
Satu lagi Pak, izin Pak Suryo, untuk yang Bapak simpulkan tadi itu sangat bagus. Cuman apakah masyarakat pengguna biusnya itu orang lokal atau orang luar? Jadi karena itu akan sangat mempengaruhi kasus di kita, mungkin bisa jadi pengguna di sana orang luar. Apakah kalau orang luar kasusnya bisa dipakai juga modelnya? Mungkin itu aja Pak.
Yeah. Terima kasih. Jadi you actually run out of time 3:30 exactly now, and this is the maximum time we're given. But I ask for permission from the people if you want to stay for like 5 more minutes just to hear the presenter to respond. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. Just first to Jos. Short, Jos.
Yeah. Thank you. I am very grateful for your interest. As you may know, USAID is funding fisheries work as well as MPA work at this very moment. And I love the idea of trying to find some opportunities for us to cross-pollinate. One issue that I'll just raise that to me is the best motivation for why we should be doing this work together is, to get this work done, we have to engage with communities, and doing that separately for MPAs and then for fisheries makes no sense to me. So let's absolutely talk. You have my contact information. Pak Halim or Pak Habibi can give that to you if you don't have it right away. And yeah, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to try to put together some activities where NOAA would provide perspective that would be combining the MPA and fisheries perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos. Paul?
Sure, thanks. So the question is, what incentive do we offer folks to join a collaborative like this? So in California, we didn't need to. It's the same thing that brought the stakeholders to the meeting in the first place. They care about these MPAs. So the local community members care about the MPAs. We do provide some funding to hold a couple meetings, coffee, things like that. However, there are other models across the ocean from this gentleman. In Zanzibar, we actually pay the local fishermen to conduct patrols.
Yeah, I really hear the point about the utility of it, because you do really need an intermediary, a data manager, and that's one of my roles. Is I am the data liaison between the raw data coming in and the enforcement partners that use it. So And the other point that I'll make is it's more applicable to certain kinds of marine protected areas. So that was the point that I made about it being helpful for a no-take reserve. If there's nobody supposed to be in there, then it's a great system. You can be monitoring around the clock. But for a limited take marine protected area, we're actually dealing with this in California right now. We want to change there are petitions to change some of them. And we're worried that it will negatively impact some of the enforcement because it is really hard to use these. If you see squiggly lines on a map, how are you supposed to know whether or not it's a violation unless nobody's supposed to be there? So it's a point very well taken, and we've been struggling with that too.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Imran. The answer is mostly the poison fishing actors is from the island. Ya. Karena ada satu desa, itu bosnya malah kepala desanya gitu loh, untuk pelakunya. Itu jadi, tapi alasan mereka adalah mereka nggak punya pekerjaan lain. Mereka pengen instan sesuai dengan perintah bos gitu loh. Sebenarnya kalau pekerjaan lain mereka mau gitu, mereka nggak mau karena ketika mereka bekerja di musim buruk risikonya tinggi. Meskipun tidak ada nelayan traditional fishing nggak ada ke situ, mereka nggak ada saingan gitu loh. Tapi kan risikonya tinggi karena nggak punya alternatif gitu. Makanya strategi kita pertama adalah sediakan dulu alternatifnya gitu loh.
Ya, artinya kalau misalnya kasusnya dari luar,
Ya.
berarti ada ekstrapolasi tambahan.
Artinya surveillance-nya harus jalan gitu. Ya kan? Surveillance itu kan tidak hanya dari pengelola, tapi kan bisa jadi community kan. Nah, ini yang ini. Tapi penting kalau kita misalkan next kita lakukan jalankan ini di MPA yang lain, kasusnya akan beda gitu. Karena setiap MPA akan punya different problems gitu. Jadi model akan dibangun based on MPA's problem itulah. Ini yang perlu kita mungkin itu.
Makasih, Pak Surya. Makasih. Sure, go ahead.
Real quick on your answer. So I use the M2, and one of the really funny things about it is we have one that's mobile. It's a mobile unit. We put it on one side of the island, it monitors the MPA there. We move it to the other side, monitors the MPA there. When the fishermen see it, they go fish the other side of the island.
Hide it somewhere, okay.
So you can have one just spinning. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay, great. I was just informed by the organizer that we still have time, a few more. We wait until the person to come and close. 5 more minutes. Okay, so yes, your turn, gentlemen, to ask question.
It starts at $50,000 US dollars. So it's expensive, and then that's also not including if you need to pay a data manager to work with the data. So we have funding programs where you can apply and then they can get funded. So in the best case scenario, you wouldn't be paying that initial $50K, but then also having a data manager is an important part of that too that's not incorporated. We haven't had an issue with that at all, but I'm surprised that you had people fishing the other side because they're pretty small. So a lot of times we haven't found people to notice that they're there at all. It depends where you put them. They can track 5 nautical miles away. So if you put them up on a cliff, we find that works better. You get better range. Spray paint it green, and people honestly don't see it very often. So I'm surprised that that's what happened with you. But yeah, great questions.
You wanna say something about that?
So the vandalism is real. So Cocos Island, Isla de Cocos off Costa Rica, that radar was inoperable. There's a number of reasons why it became that way. One of those is contemplated that the fishermen sabotaged it. So these things work, and it's a real concern whether it's a drone or a USV or a radar. But as Anastasia said, camouflaging them. The other thing is, when you see that security camera with the red light on, you don't know if it's recording or not. So if you see the radar spinning, you don't know if it's actually functioning or not. It provides a deterrent.
Great. So you see, that's great. So we move on to the next question. I mean, are there any follow-up questions on the topic? If no, then we will move on to the question from the mentee. Yeah? We have a question there to presenter number 2, which I think you, Bob, right? My question will be on what is the impact of community collaborative with the numbers of incidents over the years.
Yeah, I think so. What we can do is, track that. It's really one of the hardest things to get a handle on for enforcement is deterrence. So we really can't put a number on what didn't happen, right? All we can measure is what happened. So over time, obviously, we want to see the compliance rates go up. And for the most part, that's been happening with a very engaged community group, but it's really hard to measure a deterrence level. So I think there's more research that needs to be done, and hopefully some PhD out in the crowd can do that, and we can see some more great graphs and that talks about deterrence.
Yeah, no, great. Any follow-up questions on the one? Otherwise, I have some follow-up questions actually. So because I think eventually we actually like to see the harmony, right, between the users, people who used to fishing in that particular area, and the MPA to achieve their goals. Meaning that the intervention, in my opinion, doesn't stop from just preventing them or kicking them out of the marine protected area, right? Which I think, to me, the big questions to me is what sort of anything that we can do, if you will, to offer something or so that they actually can increase their compliance and still be able to utilize the national park in alignment, for example, with the rules of the game. I'm curious if anyone have experienced a real example on how have they been dealing with those kind of things in an effort to improve their compliance. Yeah? Anyone?
I'd be happy to share a little bit of insight that came from an extensive project in some islands from Colombia. They established an enormous biosphere reserve that was zoned with some no entry areas, some no take areas. But a big part of the zoning was actually around conflicts between two fishing sectors. There is a local fishing sector that tends to be more on an artisanal scale, and then there is a larger, more industrial scale fleet that comes from outside of that particular area, but still within Colombia. And a major selling point for the artisanal sector to agree to this whole system, and they were really key to getting a sense of kind of community compliance, was them as in exchange for having certain areas that they were no longer going to be able to fish, they had exclusive use of our other areas. And to me, that is just an example of what can happen when we go in with a broad scope of what we're trying to do and empower the individual voices within the community to be able to really say what they're hoping to do and to negotiate among themselves. And that it often can happen if there's that flexibility, that groups that might otherwise be opposed to an activity will find a way to be able to make overall policy work well for them and support it. So that's an example from Colombia.
Great. Thank you very much, Jos. Because I think in the case in many countries, especially in Indonesia, right? So many of the wrongdoing, if you will, for lack of the better term, is actually, it's actually done mainly from the pure the economic point of view. They need to go fishing in that particular area that already been their fishing ground for long time. They can move further away because they imply additional cost and everything that they couldn't necessarily able to afford, right? So something I think the big question for many of us who's been doing MPA, practitioner in this case, to address that, because definitely we like to be very relevant, to people. Yeah, we want to protect biodiversity. Yes, we have to, but also the people, the community at the same time who's been utilizing the resources. But really, in order to do so, to come into the level of, to that level, I think there might probably be some intervention needed, if you will. They will take the two goals, leverage the two goals into the same level so that they can come hands to hands, I guess, which I think is probably the questions they will need to be, seen and addressed case by case, maybe. I see, Josh, you raise your hand. Go ahead. If other person.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'd like to add one more perspective. It actually tie into some other of the presentations we heard today. There's a wonderful example from Chile, where quite a while ago in the 90s, they came up with a system in which if fishing communities were able to demonstrate that they had created enough of a collective, that collective could represent the voice of the fishing community, that the Chilean government then gave them exclusive use over their local bay, and empowered them to be able to come up with whatever regulations they would use for that local bay. So they were able to exclude other outsiders from that, and a strikingly large number of those communities ended up creating no-take areas within their local bay, because actually this is getting back to an earlier question. They had the confidence that a fish that was saved within their local area was something that was going to ultimately contribute to their future. So in terms of being able to use community engagement as a way of being able to ultimately affect compliance, if you do have the ability to be able to give local communities more power over their future, you're much more likely to be able to get them to be not just cooperative, but enthusiastic about participating in this kind of policy.
Great, thank you, Josh. I'd like to invite another question, but just to follow up on the final, on the topic, I think Pa Amer can speak more, and I think this is the things that I see MMIF is also trying to do. To explore, a partnership with the local people, or to provide some privilege to people who are living nearby the park, to have the priority access to resources, if you will, right? So in that case, they will encourage the owner, the stewardship of the resources themselves. Because again, the surveillance is often effective. It is actually involve the community themselves, because there's only so much that the official can do, right? The technology can do. As you say, if you put your radar this side, they go to the other side, right? But if the stewardship is actually, the ownership is actually been raised and, from the community themselves, they will protect their own resources, because this become theirs, basically, yeah? And I think, I hope to see more of this, yeah? We're here in Indonesia to pilot, to test whether this idea can actually works, because it has also to do with the laws, regulation, and so forth, right? So there's a lot of things that need to be dealt with before the idea can be materialized, yeah? Okay, any additional questions? We still have time. Silakan, Bu.
Thank you very much for this time. I just want to ask to Anastasia. Yeah, I just wonder that M2 what this distance M2 right in the spot until the water, sea water. So one question again. I would like to know whose mind actually the tools, actually the procedures, whose mind. So I just want to know then how the M2 can work like catch the radar, and actually radar is we can see all the whole seawater. So it means that how the local community can use that, how the government can use that. So maybe you can explain about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first question was the range, how far can it see? And it actually depends on how high above the water you are. So we have one site that is on a cliff overlooking the marine protected area, and that can see to about 10 nautical miles. And if it's a little bit lower, we usually say safely estimate 5 nautical miles. So usually that contains completely the marine protected areas that we have, that I manage. But yeah, you can manipulate it a little bit. It also depends on weather and a variety of other factors. That's your first question. And then the second question, are you asking who can use the data and who can see it and how it can be used? Was that the question? It can be up to the user. in California, we have some sites that are on private land, and so the people that own the land say they can kind of dictate who gets to see the data. We've got one site where nobody's allowed to see it, just me and the enforcement officers. And then we've got the sites that I showed here where I share that with everybody. And if people want the data, I'm happy to share it. So it depends on the site. Once you have an M2 station, it's yours to do whatever you want to do with the data. So if it was important to share that with the whole community, then that's perfectly acceptable. We have, I think in America, we have different ideas of privacy, and there's some obsession with not being monitored. And so we just leave it to, if you're in the public domain, the enforcement officers can see what you're doing. But it's up to the users. But it is data intensive, so if you want to use it, you have to be trained how to work with the data. Yeah.
In America, maybe different with Indonesia, say, like Mr. Imran said before. So the permit have to we have to have licensing for that, for the user, for the M2. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it depends on who is trying to, like, we are a nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit that uses the data. I'm affiliated with the government, so we don't have any licensing issues. If there is Navy personnel, I could see that being an issue if they don't want to be monitored, or if they're using the data, they would want to have that private. But it can be up to the user. So if you have an M2 system, you can decide who gets to see. If there's licensing issues, then that would be on the M2 user's side of how to decide how to move forward, to share the data, to not share the data, who gets access. So it can be, it can be whatever the user needs it to be.
Okay, great. I mean, more conversation, please. I encourage you to talk, one-on-one right after the session. There's so many interesting stuff that has been presented, and I think we've learned a lot, especially myself from the presenter. So, if I may, I ask for one more round of big applause to presenter. Thank you, and I've got a signal from the organizer that our time is up. So, and with this, again, thank you, presenter. Been a great presentation. Been a pleasure to moderate the sessions, and also for the audience who've been very active in asking questions. Great questions, yeah. And with that, I close the session and hand it over to the organizer. Thank you very much, everyone. Suryo. Oh, thank you. Thank you very
much. Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Pak Halim, for leading this session. Very insightful indeed. And also thank you so much for all your participation with the questions and comments and all. I didn't get to say hi and welcomed before Mr. Josh Naulis as well, President of Bridge Environment. Thank you so much for being one of the speakers in the previous session. And now, since you all have been following the 3-day symposium, you remember the first post-test you did, right? You did. Did you have any score? No score? You didn't do it? Oh, you didn't get the score yet? Okay. Oh, okay, so that we don't have to be that low when we got low score. But anyhow, now is the time for us to do a post-test. So kindly scan the barcode that is already available on a piece of paper on your table or here, now on the screen. Please just scan it and do the post-test. Hopefully this time you get a good mark. We have 10 minutes, okay, to do this test. Okay, class? We'll resume after 10 minutes. Please do not have a discussion with your partner next to you. This is for individual post-tests. No cheating. Well, collaborative actions is good, but not in this case. Okay, 1 minute left.
Selesai nggak selesai kumpulkan.
There will be no remedial for this. No.
No test, no dinner.
You want prize? Did you get 100? Because the grades are mysterious, right? So that's why. Okay, now I can hear the class is very, very loud. Maybe it means you are done with your post-test? Are we done? Okay, there's no grade ya di situ ya. Nggak tahu nilainya. But anyhow, I hope that you did your best, okay? So, thank you for doing the test, and for the past 3 days we have learned a lot. There are a lot of important things, a lot of best practices being shared as well. Thank you for all the speakers that are coming from outside countries. We really appreciate, and moderators as well. Now to make sure that we bring home all the key takeaways, we understand, and hopefully we can actually do it into actions, making it into realization. So for that, I would like to invite Pak Wawan Ridwan, Chief of Party USAID Kolektif, to give us the highlights as well as sum up all of the key findings and all of the important points we discussed in the past 3 days. Silakan Pak Wawan.
Setelah ini kita akan duduk.
Oh iya.
Okay.
Sebentar, masih mau ditayangkan.
All right, so we're waiting for the slides to be shown on the screens. Maybe Pak Wawan can start?
Iya. Terima kasih.
You're welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu sekalian, yang kami hormati Bapak Staf Ahli Menteri Kelautan Perikanan Bidang Ekologi, Bapak Dr. Hendra Yusran. Terima kasih Pak berkenan hadir untuk nanti menutup secara official acara simposium yang sudah kita lakukan 3 hari. Ibu Sally dari USAID, Pak Amer, presenters dan all participant. Tiba saatnya kita akan segera mengakhiri acara ini, dan saya akan mencoba membacakan highlight apa yang sudah kita bicarakan selama 3 hari. Perlu kami informasikan bahwa hasil simposium secara komprehensif akan segera kita susun, ya. Kemudian akan didiskusikan lagi dengan Direktorat Konservasi Ekosistem dan Biota Perairan, ya. Dan hasilnya tentu akan di-share ke seluruh partisipan, ya. Jadi mudah-mudahan ini menjadi pengalaman berharga, masukan berharga bagi kita semua, baik secara knowledge individu maupun untuk perbaikan pengelolaan kawasan konservasi perairan di Indonesia. 13 presenter dari berbagai macam belahan bumi kita ikuti, sangat luar biasa, ya, dari mulai how to make plan, how to select the area, how to define the conservation target, everything. Saya pikir ini menjadi sangat berharga bagi kita semua. Sudah siap Mas Yusuf? Oke. Ini highlight saja bahwa sebagaimana diketahui tujuan simposium ini adalah untuk mempertemukan para pemangku kepentingan yang berasal dari lembaga pemerintah, pengelolaan kawasan konservasi, LSM, peneliti, praktisi konservasi, dan perwakilan sektor swasta untuk berbagi solusi inovatif guna meningkatkan efektivitas pengelolaan yang jejaring kawasan konservasi di Indonesia. Tambahan informasi, ini adalah Simposium Internasional yang kedua. Yang pertama di Jakarta, MC-nya juga orang yang sama, Barahma Alia. Jadi ada keberlanjutan, ya. Jadi nanti hasilnya juga akan digabungkan, sehingga antara satu dan kedua ada kaitannya, ya. Jadi ini betul-betul kita berlanjut karena arahan Pak Firda not only from expertise but also from the geographical. So we cover from Europe to Afrika, Amerika, so all, ya. Jadi seperti itu, also Asia. Tema yang sekarang adalah simposium ini secara khusus berfokus pada eksplorasi praktek-praktek yang ada saat ini atau mengkaji praktek-praktek terbaik dalam tema tersebut. Jadi kita dibagi pada 3 tema, ya, sebagaimana diketahui sudah dalam TOR semua, dan ada 13 presenter, luar biasa. Jadi asalnya kita di panitia dengan Pak Firda agak pesimis juga ya untuk mencari presenters, tetapi ini ya, great, thank you ya. Dari Kenya, dari Nigeria, Australia, US, Spain, ya, terima kasih ya. Lanjut saja. Ini summary peserta supaya diketahui saja pada saat pembukaan hari tanggal 3 ada 101 orang, melebihi dari yang kita undang. Kebetulan sedang ada peserta lain menarik di sini jadi hadir. Kemudian sebagaimana mandat dari Ibu Sally harus dipisahkan laki-laki berapa, perempuan berapa. Jadi itu udah sangat countable ya. Jadi ini ada laki-laki, perempuan seperti itu. Jadi dari kementerian berapa, dari daerah berapa, dari universitas berapa, donor berapa, NGO dan sektor swasta. Sehingga ini semua berdasarkan absen. Sehingga nanti kita bisa melihat. Tapi ini pada dasarnya adalah memenuhi kuota sesuai dengan undangan. Lanjut. Nah ini lesson learned dari negara yang sekarang itu dari California, Galapagos, di Ecuador, Mediterranean, South Africa, Mikoko, Kenya, ya, Indonesia, Taka Bonerate yang Pak Suryo tadi, dan dari Seattle, US. Ya, ini jadi sudah sangat mewakili secara geographical dan apalagi ditambah dengan simposium yang pertama. Lanjut. Ini sangat panjang kalau dibacakan barangkali ya. Jadi intinya adalah bagaimana kita ingin melalui simposium ini mendapat masukan betul menuju Indonesia berjanji untuk 30% pada tahun 2045. Ya, karena kalau dunia katanya 30% 2030 barangkali nggak akan mungkin, mudah-mudahan 2045. Seperti kata Pak Direktur kemarin, memilihnya juga harus pas ya. Kemudian dari mana nih? Kemarin ada masukan dari KI ya, dari narasumber Pak Victor sudah melakukan penelitian di Indonesia bahwa cost benefit untuk pengolahan kawasan konservasi itu ternyata bahwa di Indonesia memerlukan untuk 1 tahun 2,6 miliar dolar ya sampai 3,6 miliar dolar. Tetapi ternyata kemarin menurut hasil penelitian produksi perikanan kita mencapai 7 miliar dolar. Artinya kalau ada willingness from political harusnya tidak terlalu susah untuk mencari pembiayaan untuk kawasan konservasi. Harusnya kita berpikir seperti yang tadi kata dari presenter yang barusan dari Seattle, bahwa kalau 40%, 45% nautic areanya, maka kontribusi pada fishery semakin besar. Artinya harus begitu tadi, produksi perikanan kita 7 miliar dolar, harusnya sebagian dimasukkan ke MPA. Ini sebetulnya, jadi logikanya seperti itu. Ya. Oke, kemudian kita juga sudah mendengar bagaimana share learning dari Mas Imran, tentang apa yang dikerjakan kolektif. 13 lokasi kita bekerja, kita menyusun juga ocean account yang didiskusikan oleh di Goap. Kemudian kita mulai menyusun kelembagaannya, meningkatkan kapasitas sumber daya manusianya, baik para pengelola maupun masyarakatnya. Kemudian kita juga mencari pendanaan alternatif, kemudian kita meningkatkan compliance, kemudian kita juga aware terhadap spesies yang dilindungi. Jadi saya begitu melihat USAID Kolektif objektif itu dari nomor 1 sampai 5 ini benar-benar luar biasa pada yang nyusun proposalnya. Applause kepada Bu Sally, Mas Imran ya, yang memang yang sangat luar biasa. Ya. Lanjut. Kemudian yang tema 1, kemudian dari Bu Anastasia ya. Kita kemarin belajar bagaimana tentang apa namanya jalur mamalia ya, supaya harmonis dengan kapal dan seterusnya ya. Kemudian yang paling luar biasa yang betul-betul practical in management practices from Pak John Day yang 16 tahun Direktur Great Barrier Reef. I was head of National Park 15 years also. So I know in the field Pak John. Thank you your sharing. Jadi kemarin saya betul-betul agak terhipnotis ya begitu mendengar Pak John, sangat luar biasa bagaimana setiap tool ada. Jadi ini toolnya ada, ini regulasinya ada, eksekusinya seperti apa. Maybe I need learn more from you. Thank you. Lanjut. Kemudian di tema kedua tentang managing potential from carbon, fisheries and biodiversity, ini lebih kepada financing. Ada 5 presenter kemarin dari Mikoko ya. Mikoko Pamoja. Yes, thank you. Mediterranean from Nigeria. Dari mana lagi yang 2 lagi ya? Oke, jadi itu sangat luar biasa. Ini yang sekarang betul-betul di Indonesia sedang dibicarakan. Bagaimana tentang mekanisme perdagangan karbon, bagaimana tentang perdanaan alternatif yang lain. Kita kemarin mendapatkan semua masukan dan itu semua sangat berharga. Dan untuk diketahui, untuk memperkaya ini, saya sudah menghubungi para presenter semua, Pak Amer, bahwa semua pertanyaan Mentimeter kita akan kirimkan ke presenter, mudah-mudahan presenter ada waktu untuk menjawabnya. Thank you. Lanjut aja karena waktunya juga sangat ini. Kemudian yang tema yang kedua untuk untuk yang karbon yang ya ini dari Mediterranean. Nah, sangat berharga ya karena di tentang sustainable financing itu sangat luar biasa ya, lesson learned dari Mediterranean. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa belajar dan termasuk yang dari Nigeria, termasuk Pak Direktur kita sangat concern untuk konsesi. Bagaimana di Indonesia mungkin apakah kita bisa menerapkan konsesi kawasan untuk beberapa kegiatan yang tentu responsible. Ya, kita perlu belajar untuk itu. Lanjut. Nah, yang ketiga yang barusan kita bahas ada 4 presenter mengenai penggunaan teknologi seperti penggunaan radar. Ya. Indonesia large archipelagic. Surveillance is the big challenge. Kalau tadi kata Pak Suryo harusnya 10 hari dan tiap hari 3 jam atau 20 hari setiap hari 6 jam. Pak, untuk 1 bulan 3 hari aja kita sudah kesusahan untuk selama ini. Jadi ini, oleh karena itu maka penggunaan teknologi radar misalnya sangat luar biasa. Saya pernah melihat presentasi dari Pak Firda bahwa kalau tidak salah di Galapagos 75 almost 90% using technology and another remaining 10% by ranger. So all area covered by surveillance, very good. So we need to technology. Terima kasih untuk tadi yang disampaikan mengenai Anastasia using radar surveillance. Pak Bob, thank you, ranger ya, surveillance. Ya kita juga punya Pokmaswas. If you have a community surveillance, we have also Pokmaswas. We need to learn more from Pak Bob presentation. Lanjut. Ini yang ketiga adalah disampaikan dari Pak Suryo tadi ya, yang sangat luar biasa dari 10% notiknya 20%, 30% ternyata makin tinggi memang sharing untuk fisheries sangat bagus sama dengan yang disampaikan oleh Pak Jos tadi ya. Sekali lagi dari Anastasia tadi yang mengenai penggunaan radar. Saya pikir itu saya tidak berpanjang lebar karena kalau dibacakan betul-betul itu tidak akan cukup waktunya. Tapi summary-nya seperti itu. Jadi lagi-lagi saya pikir 13 presenter ditambah lagi kemarin kurang lebih 7 pada presenter di seminar pertama. Dan kita akan disatukan menjadi satu proceeding dan akan di-share ke semua. setelah dibahas tentu dengan beberapa expert nanti, dan ini mudah-mudahan menjadi buku yang sangat berharga nanti di Indonesia. Saya pikir itu Pak staf ahli sebagai laporan dari pelaksanaan ini. Waktu saya persilahkan lagi ke Mbak Alia. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Pak Wawan. Let's give a big round of applause for the wrap-up and also the highlights of the 3-day symposium. And now let's give the chance now for Ibu Sari Katarina from USAID as a biggest support for this symposium. Please.
Om Swastiastu, selamat sore, good afternoon everyone. It's my pleasure to provide the closing remarks. Pak Hendra Yusran Siri from the Ministry of Marine and Fisheries will formally closing our 3-day international MPA symposium. I promise I'll keep my remarks short because we've been here for 3 days, a lot of information, a lot of sharing with all of the speakers and also the participants. But first of all, I would like to thank you, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Pak Hendra Yusran Siri, the advisor to the Minister, Pak Firdaus Agung, that's probably still accompanying Pak Minister, Pak Amir Hakim, and all the KKP representatives, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and representatives. And also, this event cannot be conducted very well without the support from the organizing committee. We have a full support from the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries and also from the USAID Kolektif team. So give a big round of applause to all the organizing committee for this event. And of course, the very important things that we want to have very fruitful discussions with our resource persons or panelists that's coming from all over the world that Pak Wawan already show you the pictures where they come from. So we have Pak Bob, Ibu Puri, Pak John, Ibu Anastasia, Pak James, Cairo, and all the moderators that been very very honestly sharing the experience in terms of managing the marine protected areas in their country in many ways, from enforcement, from the use of technology to support the monitoring of many users in the marine protected areas, using the data for informing the policies. Many different policies, Pak John, yeah? But probably we can follow up with Pak John, that because Great Barrier Reef probably already established good examples, technical guidance, and etc. that we can learn also from you, Pak. So probably in the near future, if any participants from our USAID target locations would like to discuss further, learn further from all the speakers that we have here, we would be very happy to facilitate as well, yeah, because we know that we learn a lot from the speakers that we have from this international MPA symposium. I think this symposium also provide a lot of opportunities, a lot of chances for us to collaborate, to learn, and also to adapt our MPA management system in Indonesia. So our USAID Kolektif program is a partnership between the USAID and then the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. We are supporting 13 marine protected areas in Indonesia, 9 in the western part of Indonesia and 4 in the eastern part of Indonesia. So the purpose that bring all the people here together to get lesson learned from different countries, from different MPAs, so we can use still this information and see where we can adapt the experience, the lesson learned to strengthen the 13 MPA in Indonesia. So thank you so much for your participation, for this very important discussion that we have. So because my boss, Pak Mohib Ahmed, opened the symposium with pantun, I'll end the symposium with pantun as well. And this is actually from the pantun competition from Bangka Belitung. Ikan belut bertubuh panjang. Ikan dibeli ikan seluang. Menjaga laut dan terumbu karang untuk generasi yang akan datang. With that, I close my remarks. Thank you again for all your participation. Selamat sore.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sally. Thank you for the pantun as well. Yeah. Well, just a little bit of information. Everyone here in Indonesia has a bank of pantun. So it's it's a poem basically. It's a four-liner sentence. It's usually rhyming. Maybe when it's translated into English, it wasn't rhyming, but it's usually rhyming, and it's got some moral sort of like story about that pantun on a different topic, different meaning and messages as well. So anyhow, thank you, Ibu, and now for the last remarks, as well as to officially close this three-day symposium, now I'd like to invite Advisor to the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries in the Land of Ecology, Dr. Hendra Yusran Siri. Please, take it away.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Om Swastiastu, and very good afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to thank on behalf of the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries to of course, the USAID, our longtime partners for the marine and fisheries. We have many projects with Celia, like in climate change and also for the fisheries. And of course, for the resource persons from the Directorate of Marine Conservation and Biodiversity, in Bahasa Indonesia, we can shorten into kebab. So Pak Firda is Director of Kebab, actually. So, and from the Conservation International Kolektif, and also for today, resource persons from NOAA, James Cook's University, project developer of Mikoko Pamoja, in one word, right?
Mikoko Pamoja is mangrove together.
Oh, two words.
Mangrove is Mikoko. Pamoja is together.
Okay. All right. Now we learn from you right now. So, okay, thank you very much. And WITA, Wild Trust Global Network for MPA Manager Network. So my colleague Bu Puri. So we have been work together since when I was in the interim executive director of CTICFF, and Charles Darwin Foundations, Bridge Environment, and also IPB University. I would like to say that this symposium is already provide us substantial input and also the way ahead for enlarge or enhance our 30% of MPA, which targeted for the sustainable fisheries, biodiversity, and also the blue economy. And we understand that the conservation area is face some challenges, such as like what you call this, the fishing vessel pass conservation areas. It can be noise problem. It's also like a leakage of oil and some gasoline as well. So, and we also learn from the resource person how the collaborative is the key word for the conservation areas. And then we need a more collaborative amongst the authority and between the stakeholders, especially for the fishing person. And the learn from symposium as well, we need for integrated with the fisheries management, and I would like to inform that Indonesia is one of the countries that's already our fisheries management. So with the current minister's policy, we promote quota-based fisheries management, and we divided our fishing area to become 6 zones, and and we put it quota based. So, but for the local fishermen, we give the preference first, and then the rest to go to the industrial or commercial fishing industry. Don't worry about that. So we put it always of small fishermen. And of course, for the management of conservation areas, we need how to involve with the controlling the fishing gears and also the harvest control strategy and harvest strategy. And we have already also the harvest strategy that issued by our ministry. And we of course, within the conservation areas, we need all regulation like that. And in terms of the blue carbon ecosystems, I think the conservation areas have what we call this the economic value, because it can be our effort in conservation areas can be counted as a contribution to the emission reduction. So I think what we are ready right now in Indonesia to put it into the NDC. We are working on the second NDC of Indonesia to mention the ocean dimension on NDC. And of course, the enhancement of technology is one key to make sure that we have the effective and efficiency for the marine conservation management, monitoring, and also evaluations. And also to get the robust and real-time, and also my word is like 24/7, the data that can be, we can rely on that can be support a decision-making process. And I think not from Pak Amer mentioned here, our monitoring system EFIKA, Efektivitas Kawasan, will use the dynamic system for the analysis, right, Pak Amer? I just read it what you write in here. So that will be used for measure the impact and also the impact for the quality of the conservation areas. And as Pak Wawan mentioned, the symposium result will be shared together with you, but for us it will be benefit to enhance and also to strengthen our policy and also regulations. So once again, I would like to thank to the resource persons and also to the participants for the last 3 days. I hope that your score will be at least 75, right, to pass the 3-day symposium, but I hope so. I try also to fill in the posters. I hope that I passed it. And so I would like to officially declare this symposium enhancing the effectiveness MPA Management Indonesia officially closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Om Santi Santi Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Matur Suksma, Pak Hendra, thank you to officially open for officially closing our 3-day symposium and also for the initiative for this symposium. And please always do adopt the concept of sustainability on MC, sustainability on speakers, moderators, and all that, okay? And if you get 75 on your score, we get a free sunset in Bali. All right? Okay, so hopefully everything is good, and we get all of the best practices, all of the learnings from the 3-day symposium. Thank you, honorable speakers. One more time, would like to thank also moderators. Thank you for flying from far away to Bali. Just the right time for sunset viewing after this. And goodbyes are usually not an easy thing, but this goodbye means that we get to see some beaches outside on outdoor Bali. And let me end this by pantun. But okay, I'm gonna give you a tip. If you have pantun, somebody delivering pantun, what you have to do is actually say awesome every time they finish with one line, okay? So awesome is always awesome all the time. Or if you want to do it locally, we say cakep, which means awesome. All right? Okay. Are you ready? The first pantun. Riding motorcycle in Bali's hot midday. Awesome. Don't forget to wear a jacket and a helmet. Awesome. Let's collaborate to manage sustainable MPA for the future of our planet. Oh, Silakan Pak.
Jalan-jalan sama orang kasih, cukup sekian, terima kasih.
Okay. It's hard to translate that. Okay.
Ikan puyuh dimasak dengan saus tomat. I love you so much.
Okay, to try to compete with Pak Hendra. Okay, I've got the last pantun. Roses are red, violets are blue. Sugar is sweet and so are you. Kita sudahi, we end this dengan Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye, enjoy Bali. Oh, yes. And I would like to invite all speakers, especially for those of you who are flying maybe later on today or maybe tomorrow. Let's have picture together. We have a booth, and for us to have a backdrop on our group photo. All participants are also welcome to join the photo session. Thank you.